water, fire, and earth. Elements of creation. Elements of destruction. These are the forces of nature's fury. Australia is a tough, dry continent. A cruel climate where the sun burns the earth red across an inland ocean of dust. When things heat up down under, nature goes mutant. Whoa! Some face a hard scrabble life farming this arid world.
This would be an unprecedented drought. Yeah, it's not good.
We've gone into survival mode. We've had no rain for 3 years.
While in the towns and cities, many Aussies face the grit and blast of sandstorms a mile high.
Oh, yeah, now I'm getting blown away.
The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse riding out of this red sky.
Others challenge their bodies in a race across the fiery furnace of Australia's deserts.
When you see a dead animal's carcass, it sort of did bring home that, oh my God, things die out here.
Australia is often called the driest continent. Without the big rivers that flow through Europe and America, the middle of Australia is an arid, dry land where 80% of the country gets less than 60 centimetres of rain a year. These are the dust lands, a place where the dangerous mix of heat, dust and no rain can bring drought, destruction, even death. On the edge of this barren land are the Western Plains of New South Wales. Where families have farmed sheep and cattle for generations. Now it's a place praying for rain, hard hit by the worst drought in living memory, where farmers have to hand feed their animals so they can live.
Yeah, it does hurt. I'm out here every day. There's always something to do, and if I'm not out here, things don't get done. When you're drought feeding stock, you've got to be here. I've got a job to do. They depend on us. You just got to come out, do the job, and go home.
This is Andrew Cook, 45 years old and a father of 2. Andrew's family has farmed sheep on this land for generations. And his father, Clyde, has his heart in the soil.
Well, I've been here for 70 years. We bought this property my father did in 1964. The wife and I was married in 71, and so we moved here on this property then. I've been here all my life.
In a good year, this land is lush and green.
This particular spot here, we've got a photo. In 2016, we had, believe it or not, we had floods here. My son was in the photo, and there was water all across the road. And it stretched back there for a couple of K. So in contrast to it now, it's polar opposites.
This year may be the last for the Cook family, as a decade-long drought drags down hope of the land ever providing a future.
This is some of the remnants or results of the drought. We would have lost 20% of the ewes, the females, struggling through lambing. You see it firsthand here with livestock numbers dropping. That impacts on your income. Yeah, well, that is the bottom line. It is a business. I've got a family to feed. Their security is this business. Their future is in this business. "300 acres here." That was going to hopefully replenish our oat supply, but there was no rain, and it never got planted, so it's just stayed here. as is. I don't really like to look at it when I'm driving past because if it's a bit like a bit of a failure, it's still sitting there the same as it was 12 months ago. Yeah, so this would be an unprecedented drought. My grandfather had the drought and father had the drought in '64, but my father now says that it wasn't this bad. So that is concerning for me. Because he hasn't witnessed something this bad, and neither have I. So going forward, yeah, it's not good. Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that are stressful, but how much preparing do you do? Do you prepare for a 3-month drought or a 3-year drought? You can't let the stress get to you, otherwise you might as well go and do something else because you are going to have a drought and it will be stressful. It's just how you manage it.
Droughts are a phenomenon understood by Dr. Sarah Perkins Kirkpatrick from the University of New South Wales, who studies these climatic events.
Drought can be defined in many different ways. So we have a hydrological, a meteorological, and an agricultural drought. They're defined with different indices, but basically it's a period where it hasn't rained much, if at all, for a long amount of time.
And most Australian droughts are connected with bigger weather cycles that affect the whole nation.
So the variability that Australia's weather and climate experience does mean that we're more prone to extreme events. We either see one type of extreme or another in terms of rainfall and temperature. It goes one way or the other.
As these western plains run out of water and dams run dry, the Cook family scratch the last available water they can from ever-decreasing reserves.
Longer do you reckon? Another 24 hours?
Getting very, very low. It's only about 2% of water left in it. We're a bit concerned.
If we weren't to be able to take anything out of it, yeah, we would have to destock because water wouldn't last forever here. Destocking meaning selling off your stock. And just hopefully that doesn't happen. If it is the last time, yeah, the end is near.
Australian Bureau of Meteorology extreme weather expert Dr. Grace Legg has studied how this drought has hit Australia's rural lands.
The drought that we're currently seeing through parts of New South Wales and Queensland is very significant. There are large areas of experiencing drought for months and is continuing on, unfortunately not seeing a lot of rainfall through those areas. It's been months and months of less than average rainfall, so unfortunately will take more than one weather system moving through to really break that drought and is being felt by lots of people through those areas.
But yeah, we've never been in a spot where we've run out of water fully, and I don't really know what we'd do if we were in that spot.
For scientist Chris Turney, this long drought may be a warning of things to come.
I mean, when the British first set up the settlement at Botany Bay, they almost went straight into a drought and almost lost the colony straight away for several years. One of the fascinating things in Australia, I mean, it's very much a land of drought and fire. It characterises this amazing continent we live in. And one of the things we've been looking at in the past, going back hundreds of years using annual growth rings on trees, which are moisture dependent, we can see that the droughts and the floods wax and wane through time over the last few hundred years. And the droughts seem to be becoming more frequent and longer. One of the ideas that came out of North America in the last 20 years or so is this idea of mega droughts, droughts that last for multiple years and decadal length and sometimes in duration.
A few hours' drive from Nyngan is the drought-ruined town of Trundle.
We've had businesses close in the town. Unfortunately, today we just lost our last shop, so we don't have any food stalls left in Trundle at the moment. So we've lost 22 kids out of the school since 2014 because the work's dried up. The work's dried up, and unfortunately, what's also dried up is people's spirit and the hope that was in the town before. So it's just been slowly going downhill. It's like almost watching the place die.
John Southon is the principal of Trundle Central School. His students are just the same as kids anywhere. They love their sports, their friends, but the dry heat of the drought stalks their world, striking the children's family farms, bringing the community to breaking point.
Without being too dramatic, we've gone into survival mode. We're just looking at how we're going to survive because we're actually in our dry time now. We've had no rain for 3 years, no significant rain. Kids have left town because of the drought. They've had to move away because there's not the work in the town. They say they'll come back, but I just can't see that that's going to happen. The whole east coast of Australia is in drought at the moment. This is a natural disaster.
At Principal John Southon's school in Trundle, the local kids are battling on and growing up fast. Kids like Oliver Dunn.
My family has a farm at about 35 kilometres out of town towards Narromine, and it is a sheep and cropping farm, and it is 1,000 acres. Oh, the farm is really struggling again at the moment. We've just harvested a few crops, but there's been absolutely nothing. The dams are all dry, so that's not helping. The tanks are empty. Our family is struggling financially. Mum is working 3 jobs trying to make ends meet, so it's really hard. And while Dad's off away doing farm hand jobs and everything while I'm at home. It makes me feel pretty lonely, really, and it makes me feel like the man of the house, and all this pressure's been put on me, and it's not a nice feeling. I'm only 12.
Back at Little Ollie's school, Principal Southon is doing everything he can to make the kids' lives easier.
Well, in relation to the little bit of green we've kept going at the school, we've done that as a mental health strategy because these kids are walking through dried up red dirt paddocks. And then they come to school and they see the green grass and they say, well, at least this is a little emotional oasis for us. At least things are still green here.
Sutho, he's really helping us because, he has kept all the lawns green. Yeah, he's just gone on and above what he needs to do for us, and it's really helping us because, now we just feel supported, really.
I think it's just massively important for kids' mental health that they see that their school is still that oasis that's trying to beat this thing. Their school's not giving up, and they can come here every day and I encourage them to take their shoes off and walk across the green grass and lie on it and do all this type of thing because that's what you do as a kid. As a kid, you don't grow up so quick because of this drought. I've got 9-year-olds that are working at 9 o'clock at night and they're talking like seasoned farmers. They're talking like 50-year-old farmers. That's not right. Kids don't grow up that quick. Kids roll around on green grass. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, I used to not want to come to school, but now, just the way it's changed, I feel like, yay, another day at school. Not like, oh, not another day at school. Just more brighter and happiness.
For these kids, the school is a small oasis. But out on the farms, as the drought burns the soil and the land turns to dust, another form of mutant weather threatens these families. Dust storms.
We've had a number of dust storms, yeah. You get the odd dusty day, but we've had 4 or 5 full-on dust storms, wind will pick up mid-morning and then it can blow all day. You'll see it out in the horizon, you'll be working in the dust. They see a build-up out in the west, rolls in over the river. I'd rather be seeing storm clouds come in than a dust storm. The one New Year's Eve, it seemed to build up and fairly rich and thick. But we've had a number now, and going out there New Year's Eve, things were getting dark, and it seems to roll up, and we had to park the car off the road, had the family in the car, and just park there till it cleared, which it did, and then we continued on to the party. But when we get out there, everything's covered in dust. It leaves a trail behind.
South of the drought-ruined farms of Nyngan and Trundle, the town of Mildura was hit by a dust storm in 2019 that was of biblical proportions.
Hey there, folks. We have another dust storm come to Mildura.
Mildura resident Nicholas Zachary was there to film it as the wall of dust crushed into his town. Though, as if by stealth, the dust storm gave little hint it was on its way.
Yeah, the lead up to the dust storm the day before was just an average day, blue skies, a couple of clouds, that sort of thing. Nothing unusual, no wind. Actually, even that morning was nice and calm, beautiful blue sky.
But the mile-high wall of sand had the town in its path.
So I left work, got home just after 5 o'clock and, got out of my car and that's what I found is a dust storm coming over the houses. I just pulled out my phone and started filming it, basically. So this happens probably at least once a month in Mildura. In some months it happens more often than just once. This happens regularly. Yeah, pretty much. It was a wall of dust kilometres high and you could see it coming from a mile away. Can't smell it yet, but it's a-coming. In the footage that I took, it was about 4 minutes from the time that I started recording till when it actually sort of got there. Let me just pan along so you can see just how big this thing is. This is pretty damn extreme.
Then the dust storm hit.
It looks like the thickest part of it's coming straight through here. So just before the dust was directly overhead, huge amount of wind, and then as soon as the dust hit and it went black,
it has never been this dark before. This is not cool, man.
It is still 5 o'clock, as you can probably see there. I might try and get a bit closer to this street light.
I couldn't believe it. 10 past 5 in the afternoon, completely black.
It's so dark. There is so much dust in the air.
No sky, no stars, no moon, no nothing, no sun. You couldn't even, normally when there's a dust storm, you can see the sun through it. Nothing. It was just pitch black.
Oh, yeah, this is how dark it is. Dark enough for me to run into a tree.
Scientist Patrick de Decker from the Research School of Earth Science at the Australian National University understands the bigger link between dust storms and drought.
Australia is the land of contrast. There are very wet periods and there are very dry periods. With a lack of water, vegetation dies and the soils are very dry, and then material can be lifted under some circumstances by the wind.
All right, I need to go inside because I literally cannot see anymore.
Day went to night and the night went to hell. And that's pretty much what happened in those few minutes.
The house at the end of the street isn't visible. There's a car right there, parked, completely invisible.
As extreme weather expert Dr. Grace Legg explains, it's the dry heat in Australia that causes these mutant dust storms.
So So often in Australia, we do get a lot of what we call dust storms, which is we start to see that dust being raised up by those stronger winds, and it's normally on a cold front or some sharp change. So it's a sudden change in the area that we're seeing those winds come from. Over Australia, because we have a lot of areas that often see much less rainfall, a lot of dust builds, not so much vegetation there, so it is quite loose. And when we get those really strong winds coming through, it picks up the dust and ends up causing a lot of problems, very low visibility in them as well.
These down-under dust storms are more than just a meteorological mutation. They bring hell to the families who have to live through them.
In the afternoon, the wind will pick up and then we'll start getting dust storms. And it just coats everything in red dust. I've had farmers' wives say that it's beaten me. You'll have the sky that will almost look orange. And it's relentless.
And dust storms are a phenomenon that are increasing as the drought drags on.
Well, we now know that with the increase of temperatures, the land is parched in many places, and as a result, you've got more dry conditions, and a large proportion of Australia today is extremely dry, and this is when dust storms are going to become more prevalent.
Yeah, I would say that. Dust storms are getting pretty frequent, yeah. When I was younger, yeah, you might have one dust storm in the summer, but yeah, not a run of them like this, and just windy days.
As the storm blanketed the town, it became a vision of hell.
Yeah, it looked like the sort of thing you'd expect to see the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse riding out of this red sky and just, you know, descending upon the earth. It was pretty full on.
I sincerely hope that anyone with any breathing difficulties is not suffering too badly at the moment.
Once it went black, it was black. It was nighttime. My watch was barely visible from, you know, the kind of visual distance that you'd look at your watch at.
Oh, yeah, now I'm getting blown away.
You could feel dust hitting your body, hitting your arms, hitting your face.
It's an experienced Principal John Southern has also had to survive during his time in the Outback.
The wind actually sounds, I know this sounds very, very dramatic, but it almost sounds like it's bringing destruction with it. You see when the dust storms settle, the sun's behind it and the whole atmosphere is orange. We wouldn't let the kids go out to play for lunchtime because it was dangerous. The amount of dust in the air was dangerous to your health.
As the storm eased, a more surreal, dreamlike appearance took over the town.
When these dust storms hit, Mildura turns sepia. It looks like you're in an old movie. It's like living in the 1930s when you're in Mildura during a dust storm.
The storm had passed, but the damage was done.
So after the dust storm had passed and it was kind of safe to travel again, there were definitely a lot of trees down around, lots of leaves and limbs down across roads and on footpaths and things like that. I do worry what the future's going to be like. If these dust storms continue like that, it's going to make living in Mildura difficult. It can't be good to be breathing that stuff in. With 2020 hindsight, filming in the middle of that was a silly idea. The dust I breathed in, I don't know what's in it.
To live through hell on earth once is an experience no one could forget. But as the drought continues, it may become a more permanent way of life.
If the drought doesn't break, I think dust storms will continue to be a problem and probably get worse and worse.
In the dead heart of Australia, there's miles of land where dust has already devoured the earth. This is a place where temperatures can get up to 50 degrees centigrade. That's 122 degrees Fahrenheit. A place so hot that if you're stuck out here, exposed to the sun, you can be dead within hours. Despite its fatal possibilities, this desert also attracts the world's most extreme ultramarathon runners, wanting to test themselves against the worst conditions mutant nature can deliver.
I'm the type of person who just always wants to be pushing my boundaries, being the best version of me I can be. Being out in the extreme, it's you against the elements, and pretty much it's your head against the elements.
Jill Hennessy is an ultramarathon runner who is based in Sydney. She has run more than 50 marathons around the world. But the race in the middle of the Australian desert, known as the Big Red Run, brought her face to face with the dead centre of Australia's harshest climate.
When you see a dead animal's carcass, it sort of did bring home that, oh my God, things die out here.
The Big Red Run was organised by Greg Donovan.
The Big Red Run is a 250-kilometre, 6-day ultramarathon through the sands of the Simpson Desert. Generally, it's a self-sufficient run, so people have to provide all their own food and gear and sleep in a tent every night and basically get out and run a marathon most days and a double marathon on the 5th day.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The double marathon Greg talks about is 84 kilometres. That's 52 miles on one day in hot desert conditions.
You know, with the sort of people who take on the Big Red Run, you know, runners like Jill Hennessy, you know, you would look at a person like that and they just look like your average everyday person, but you wouldn't expect them to be ultra-endurance athletes. And, you know, what sort of sets them apart from people that don't do that is that, you know, they're really driven and, you know, they're mentally very strong.
Mental strength is one thing, but extreme heat can destroy the human body, as sport and exercise medicine physician James Lawrence explains.
So as your core body temperature starts to rise, what we typically see is that your pulse rate goes up, your tachycardic, fast heart rate, you can start to feel a bit lightheaded, dizzy, nauseous, headache, fatigued, and that's in the realm of what we'd call heat exhaustion or minor heat illness. If our core body temperature continues to rise up above 40 degrees or even 41 degrees centigrade, then what people can experience is start to get confused, can start to become drowsy or even go into unconsciousness or a coma. And that is what we consider to be heat stroke. And if that's untreated, then that's fatal.
It was this possibly lethal heat stroke condition that was to hit Jill Hennessy on day 5 of the ultramarathon, the day when she faced the final distance of 84 kilometres and a day when she ran out of water alone in the desert.
On day 5 of Big Red Run, it was the 84K, the long day, and I'd started that day thinking it will be what it'll be. I didn't put any time frame on myself. I just went into it going, Jill, it'll be what it'll be. So like any other day, I just did the same routine. I was having gels, I was trying to drink. But as the day got hotter, like it was very cold at the start and then it got hot, I was drinking more water because the desert is dry, so you drink more. And I ran out of water. So the hottest part of the day was gone and I'd run out of water. I didn't know how far it was to the next checkpoint. Trying to stay positive, not thinking about we've got no water, but just going, okay, let's just keep moving forwards. There was no one around, like there was no people. I couldn't ask anyone for water.
Jill was starting to experience the possibly fatal effects of heat exhaustion.
Dehydration sneaks up on you. Like, and the same with hypothermia in the cold. It sneaks up on you, and they always say when you start hallucinating, it's got too far.
In the middle of the Australian desert, Jill's body was shutting down. She was now experiencing heat stroke.
At 45 degrees, proteins will denature, so that means their molecular structure actually starts to break down and they're essentially destroyed. So that's what happens when you cook meat. Yeah, so that's obviously not sustainable with ongoing human physiological function.
You know, your brain is going to start to sort of shut down. You're going to have sort of irrational thoughts. You're not going to be able to think rationally. And it will come on gradually, but then, you know, sometimes it can tip over the edge and it's too late.
If you have heat stroke and your core body temperature is high and that's not treated, then that essentially starts to cause organ failure and multiple organ failure, and that is why that condition is fatal if left untreated.
For Jill, heat stroke was well underway as she moved forward. Overheated and exhausted, she tried to continue.
My rookie era, I obviously went in a little bit naive to think, oh, it's dry out here. There was a bit of naivety on my behalf not to have thought about, you will drink more. I was never ever thinking I'm done. It didn't even go through my head.
Survival expert and one of the world's top stunt women, Kai Fano, has some life-saving tips for anyone caught in a similar desert scenario to what Jill was facing.
Whatever you do, do not drink your own pee. This is a myth that has come about on reality television. If you choose to drink your own pee, please do it while you are hydrated, because by the time you are dehydrated, all you have is waste products in your pee, and that is actually going to shut down your kidneys and speed you towards death rather than helping you out. Just on heat exhaustion as well, by the time you're thirsty, you are already dehydrated. So if you do have water, just keep taking small sips to stave off that level of heat exhaustion, because eventually heat exhaustion leads to confusion and you won't be making good decisions with regards to your survival out there.
For Jill, the heat exhaustion was intensifying and starting to shut down her ability to think clearly.
Yes, I was a little bit hallucinating, and I think I was staggering a bit. I needed to get water in me. And then I remember coming over a dune and just seeing a hint of red, which was the tent, and going, I just got to get there. So I started running. And when I did actually see that tent, it's funny how, I think it's almost a survival instinct. I put on a run, and I'd been probably walking, just feeling weak. And then as soon as I got sight of that tent, I just started a beeline straight for it and was able to run. Yeah, because there were medics out there, and there was, I think, nurses at the checkpoint. If any of them had said to me, do you want to pull the pin? I might have, but they didn't. So that was good. They didn't go negative. They stayed positive. What do you need? Can we help you? So they kept that positivity that I needed. So then I continued on, and I actually then got sort of stronger. Like, it's amazing how once you refuel and get fluids back in, your body's still strong.
Jill survived and finished the race, but the desert had taught her a lesson.
I'm not out to beat the person in front of me. That's a nice to have. I'm out to beat me. And I'm out to go, Jill, what can you do in this situation? And how are you going to deal with it? And how are you going to grow? And the things I've discovered about myself is that, yeah, I am pretty determined. I am a positive person. I don't want to let anything beat me. Elements, extremes, I'll just deal with it. Someone will say you can't do that. I'm going to show you I can do that.
For those who challenge themselves in the furnace of desert racing, the right equipment is vital. as former military operative and survival expert Joanna Harmdorf explains.
With heat, a lot of people tend to take more layers off, but exposed skin in extreme heat is incredibly dangerous, so resist the urge to walk around bare chest because you're incredibly warm, because heat stroke, blisters, burns are going to get you quicker than the heat will. If you go out to an area with extreme heat, then head cover is essential. Light-fitting clothes, cotton, something that has the air go through it, so you do cool down underneath. You do not want to have any exposed skin if you're going to spend a lot of time out in the sun.
Jill and her fellow ultramarathon runners accept the challenge to go into this furnace of extreme heat. But back on the farms of the Western Plains, life just gets tougher as the drought continues after 3 years without decent rain. School principal John Southen has done everything he can for the kids at his school as their farms dry up, shut down, and their families face ruin.
Like, if you talk to any one of my farming kids, they can tell you everything about their farm because they're proud of it, they're proud of their heritage and they're proud of where they come from. But this natural disaster is just taking that away from us.
Little Samuel understands just how tough it is as the drought destroys their lives.
When we see stock down, it's probably makes me feel like it's not so much me, but worrying about Dad, how he's going to cope when he sees it. Because I just see it as like, there's another sheep gone. Because it's happened so much, it doesn't hit me that hard anymore. Mum feels pretty bad about it because she, stresses easily, so she probably hits her 10 times as hard as me, and I'm just a kid, but it hits me too. Struggle to keep going.
Samuel's mother, Josephine Charlton, works at the same school that John is principal of. But with a strong farming background, she knows the pain of surviving the drought.
Well, basically, it gets disheartening because you can try and do everything right, but at the end of the day, you can't put the moisture there to grow your crops. So when you're seeing these dust storms roll in, and you just know that there's obviously not enough moisture to do your normal farming. And you can be the best farmer in the world, but obviously water makes all those things happen. That's getting very scarce.
Josephine also understands the fight that Principal John Southen has to go through to make the best life he can for the kids.
And he's taught the kids that see his work, he's taught them to believe in that you can make a difference and you can change things if you need to. And that's a very positive thing to bring to a school. Basically one of our dams at the back end of the property, and normally this is a dam that would hold water year in, year out. And just the impact and the length of this dry time has meant that it's actually now fully depleted, and we'll just have to look at maybe cleaning it out a bit more now and be ready for when it does rain, and hopefully we get enough runoff not too far down the track to fill it back up again. But I know a lot of people in Australia right now might be feeling pretty crap. I just hope that they believe that it will change and it will rain. So I just hope that you lean on each other and focus on the positives and focus on what you can deal with in a day. And hopefully they'll get through and see the other side, and you know, you can always rebuild. Hard and all as it might be, you can always rebuild no matter what happens and whatever throws in your path. And if you keep that focus, you'll be okay.
Australia's Bureau of Meteorology announced that 2019 was Australia's hottest year on record, while rainfall was the lowest on record, raising questions troubling to both scientists and everyday Aussies.
It's a hugely confronting question what we actually have to do about climate change. It's a very confronting conversation where society has to make about what we do about climate change. We know high greenhouse gas levels are causing the changes we see today. We have to reduce our carbon dioxide emissions, and we actually have to not only reduce the emissions, we actually have to draw down the carbon that's in the atmosphere. That's causing the changes we're seeing today.
So the question about how our quality of life changes is a very subjective one, because some people might have a very good life if they have the resources to adapt to climate change, if they have the resources to continue to have safe food supply, a house, etc., then the quality of life might not be affected for some, and for others it might be a catastrophic change because they are subject to the front line of these impacts. For example, the bushfires might burn down their houses. You can say that for some people in some areas, it's going to be extreme impacts all the way up to death.
We're going to have to manage the water resources in a more intelligent manner. We're going to actually have people prepared for fires and other extreme events which they hadn't really ever thought about. Society-wise, how are we going to actually protect the most vulnerable in our society? As a community, we have to be more aware of who our neighbours are going to be, because not everyone can look after themselves, not under those extremes. And that's a really honest conversation we as society have to have.
I must confess, I'm part of a pretty privileged part of society. We all are here in Australia, and I'm largely concerned about those who don't have the economic means like us. Yes, our societies are sometimes much more vulnerable, and so we might live in a false sense of security, because as we see in sometimes the tipping points for societal democratic societies are much closer than we think. But in terms of climate change, I would largely be worried about the others. And the others are those who are directly dependent on their subsistence agricultural farming. And there, I think I see a very bleak future.
So everywhere is going to see an increase in heat waves. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, you will see more of them and they'll become more intense. But there's certain nuances on how much more intense or how much more frequent they will be, depending on where you are. So over in Australia, for example, the south and parts of the southeast already experience the most hottest heat waves, and they're going to see even hotter heat waves in the future.
Yeah, I think it's a real worry what's happening with the climate. So we are seeing unprecedented changes, and these are related to our activities. There's no doubt about that. And with children, our small children, you know, I wonder, is Australia the right place for them to grow up? Is the temperature going to get too high? Are we going to have droughts? Is there going to be any water for them to drink? So these are real concerns facing everybody in the world.
Yes, this is the worst drought I've experienced, and my father before me, and he's 71.
Under a changing climate, we'd expect to see more frequent droughts, and perhaps those droughts being longer. So that obviously means more stress in terms of our agricultural industries, our water security. So these are certainly issues that policymakers should be taking account of when we're looking at a changing climate. How will our agricultural industries survive under a changing climate? How will we be able to secure our water supplies into the future?
The farmers are doing it tough. Yeah, if it continues like this, it's going to make life tough for a lot of people, that's for sure.
As the planet warms, Australia and New Zealand are going to experience a lot more extreme events, and they can manifest themselves in all sorts of different ways. We're certainly going to see increased drought with less chance of flooding, higher temperatures, particularly at night. Human beings need cooler temperatures to actually recover from the heat of the day, and it's those minimum temperatures at night, they're rising even faster than the maximum temperatures during the day.
I don't know, but we would be absolutely ridiculously naive to believe that we don't have to look at alternatives of what we're doing. We don't have to question what we're doing.
Yeah, well, I don't like when scientists speak up and say that it's getting hotter and that sort of thing. But are they right? You know, they could be right.
I'm 71. Climate change is going to affect me, but I'm not going to live that long. But my grandchildren, I'm very scared for them because the consequences of sea level rise and extremely high temperatures, a lack of water. Globally, the indications are that many countries are going to run out of food, are going to be less productive. It's pretty scary.
At the moment, people living in the interior, with those extreme temperatures that we've seen just the last few years, they're just surviving. They're not living, they're surviving in those high temperatures, trying to keep cool. We're probably going to see a migration of people more to the coastline. We're going to actually have to manage that in a meaningful way.
It's well known around the world. Australians are really, they try very hard. They battle so many harsh environments and climatic situations in what they do. And, they tend to jump back up from adversity, and that's what's great about Aussies. But at the same time, this one will stretch us all. I really think it will.
Unfortunately, it is looking like we're going to continue this sort of drier trend and warmer conditions. It's hard to say when that drought will end. That being said, though, every drought in Australia has ended at some point.
I reckon if it rained and it poured and we actually got, really good moisture in the ground, I'd probably come out and roll in the paddock. And I wouldn't care if my clothes got stained, and I'm normally pretty particular around clothes getting stained because I've got to wash them. But I would actually just come out with the kids and probably get as filthy dirty as I could because I just love the smell of wet dirt.
When it rains, really, we'll all just strip off and dance in the puddles and throw a party, and yeah, that'll be good fun and just hope for more.
And in early 2020, the drought did begin to break for some of these farmers across eastern Australia. Not everyone was in greener pastures yet, but a good run of summer rain started to fill the dams again. A glimpse of hope after years of drought.